Hey guys, welcome back to the BFS Fishing Channel, and in this video we're going to be going over some modifications that you can make to your KASTKING Valiant Eagle 2 to make it a little bit better. Okay, so there's going to be two modifications that we're going to be doing, and the first one is going to be the handle knob bearing replacement. The size of bearing that you're going to need is this, so 4mm by 7mm by 2mm. They're sold by a store called Rain and Dew Bearing. This is the only store that I could find on AliExpress that has this particular size. Normally, you find these bearings in a 4 by 7 by 2.5mm, and that's the more common size. But for some reason, KASTKING went with a 4 by 7 by 2 bushing, and so that's what we have to have. So I'll put a link to this store and these particular bearings in the description below. It'll be a non-affiliate link as always. Okay, so that's one of the mods that we're going to be covering today. The second mod has to do with the brakes. And so, as you guys know, this reel and the Kestrel Elite BFS are on the kind of over-braked side of things. Now, the reason for that is twofold. One, because, and I have no way to confirm this, but this is my theory, is that the magnets actually on the brake shoes are quite strong. So that could be one of the reasons why this reel is overbraked. The second reason has to kind of do with the way that the brake assembly, so I'm calling this entire thing the brake assembly, has to do with the way that the brake assembly kind of interacts with the spool at the minimum setting. Now, if you look at a reel like the Shimano Aldebaran, and I've talked about this before, but if you look at a reel like the Shimano Aldebaran, if I can get it out. Come on, spool. All right. So what you have is you have a brake assembly that goes all the way, almost all the way into the side plate. So it retracts very far away from the spool. And so when you take a look at how far the spool can go onto the brake assembly, I don't know if you guys can see that there, it's almost flush, right? So if I were to do that and kind of put it side by side, you can see that the brake assembly actually does not go into the spool at all. And so what you get is basically a 0 setting, or a 1 setting is the lowest setting for the Aldebaran, that has the brake assembly not inducing a magnetic field on the spool, or vice versa actually, because Lenz's law is the opposite. So the spool doesn't induce a reverse magnetic field onto the magnets on the brake assembly. So I think that's why this reel, the Aldebaran, free spools so well. On the Valiant Eagle 2, if you look, okay, so we'll go ahead and fit everything together. So just so you have a point of reference. You can see how far it goes in. And then if we put it side by side, which is not easy to do, but if you put it side by side like that, you can see that the brake assembly actually protrudes into the spool a little bit. So there's going to be a little bit of a magnetic force that, or magnetic field that the spool is going to feel. So then it's going to induce a reverse magnetic field back onto these magnets. So there is some magnetic force being applied to the spool. And so I think that is the other reason why we're getting that braking effect at a min setting. So we can't obviously modify the side plate to make the brake assembly move further in to the side plate. But what we can do is a couple things. Or actually, the one thing that we can do is to try to reduce the magnetic force, or the magnetic force of these magnets essentially. And there's a couple ways that we can do that. So one way is a way that Jimmy from Raw Fishing did, which what he did was he kind of actually went into the individual brake shoes and then physically removed one of the magnets from each of the brake shoes. So if you look here, you can kind of see that there are square magnets, and there's 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 per brake shoe, because there's 2 brake shoes. So I think he physically removed one of these shoes from, or one of the magnets from the brake shoes. Now, that's definitely a viable way of doing it. I just don't trust myself to kind of go in and then remove one of these without breaking and fracturing the magnets. And so I kind of don't want to try that. And then also, once you remove it, I'm not sure how easy it is to put back in. But anyways, that is one of the ways that you can go ahead and reduce the magnetic force of this brake assembly. The other way is another way that another YouTuber by the name of Kairyu Lure Maniacs. There's a guy named Zen, really nice guy, Japanese YouTuber, and I'll go ahead and link his video in the description below. But what he did was he found a way to kind of shield the magnets using a ferromagnetic material. And so his material of choice was from basically, I think it was like a soda can of some sort. And he kind of cut the soda can into small strips and then kind of fixed them to cover up the magnets. And so that is definitely another option of reducing the magnetic field. In the same kind of strategy, a YouTube user that I am now friends with, I'll link his information in the description below. He decided to use nickel foil. So that's definitely another way of kind of shielding some of these magnets. The only issue with that is nickel foil is a little bit pricey for the amount of foil that we're actually going to be using or on this brake shoe assembly. So that is definitely an option, but it's going to cost you a little bit of money. I think it's like $10 to $15. The third way is the way that I'm going to show you. It doesn't cost any money, but you have to be a little wary of some of the parts. And so I'm actually going to go ahead and show you how to do that first, and then we'll go back to the handle bearings, because this one is going to take a little bit more time and effort. So what you're going to need for this one, and what we're going to be doing, is actually removing one of the brake shoes completely from the brake assembly. And so theoretically, that will just cut the magnetic force induced onto the spool, or is felt by the spool, in half. And so we're going to do an experiment. I don't actually know how much it'll reduce the magnetic forces by, so we're just going to do a comparison. So this is going to be on the max brake settings with the stock brake assembly, and we're going to see how long it free spools, and then we'll go to the min setting. So that was actually pretty quick on to kind of stop the spool. So on the min settings, it's going to be like this. Which is not too bad. And keep in mind, I have the Roro BFS ST bearing upgrade kit that is also, it works with the Kestrel Elite. So I bought mine off of Bait Finesse Empire, but I think you can also get it off of rorolure.com. Anyways, so now we're going to take out one of those brake shoes, and then we're going to kind of compare by putting it back into the reel and then doing that free spool test. So what you're going to need is a Phillips, a very small Phillips, and this one is I think it's a J1. Yes, a J1. So J1 Phillips. And so what you'll do is you'll notice that there are two Phillips screws right here, 1 and 2, and then we're going to remove both of those, but hold pressure on that plate before you let off, and I'll show you why. So we're going to go ahead and remove both of those, and they're very small screws, so it helps to have a magnetic screwdriver bit, but also a magnetic working surface so that you kind of don't lose anything very easily. It also helps to have a really well lit area, because you'll see why in a second. Okay, so keep your finger on there once you've removed both of those screws, which I have, and then holding it completely flat or putting it down on some place flat. Now I'm going to bring it up close to you guys. You want to take off that plate ever so gently. All right, and so what you've got is two brake shoes. I'm going to need to use something that's non-magnetic, or all right, so here you've got two brake shoes and you've got two little springs. So without disturbing one of the brake shoes, we're just going to remove one of the other brake shoes, or the opposite brake shoe. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to gently hold one of the brake shoes down without trying to move it laterally, and then just kind of go in and then remove and pick out the other one, and then don't lose that just in case you ever want to go back. So don't lose that at all. And that spring will kind of stick to that magnet. So when you reinstall this ever, it's not fun because that spring wants to go and stick to the brake shoes. Anyways, so now we're going to take that plate again, and you're going to let up on your thumb ever so gently so you don't disturb that brake shoe as much as possible, but I did, and that's okay. So long as you're able to see that that spring is still in that little channel right there. I don't know if you guys can see. I don't know if my lights are kind of reaching, but you just kind of want to put some gentle pressure to keep it in place. All right, so we've got that there, and what we have is the plate, and when you see those two logos, opposite of those two logos, you'll have two little screw circles, and those two little screw circles need to go right here and right there. So we can just take that plate and put it right on top, kind of sliding it over is probably the easiest way to do it, of doing this. And then you want to put even pressure kind of opposite where the logos are to hold it down, or you can put one finger on top of the whole thing and then kind of reposition and then kind of hold down on one side, and then take that small screw, one of the small screws, and then just kind of gently push it in to the hole and then reattach it or re-screw it into that opening. And then once you've got one in, you're pretty much good to go. So then you want to do the other one. All right. So we've got everything assembled basically like that. So it has one brake shoe missing and then one installed. And then you can kind of like rotate it to just make sure that the spring is not bound to anything. Okay, so we're gonna keep this guy right there, and then we're gonna put this back in. We're gonna go ahead and lock it, and then we're gonna try it again. So we're gonna go with the max test first. Oops. So definitely not as strong, but it still stops it. And then we're gonna go down to the min. So I'm on absolute min. We're gonna try again. And while it's not the longest in the world, it does seem like it free spools a lot longer. You guys can go back and measure how long, or time how long it actually free spins. I'll actually probably go and try casting it like this, because I think that's going to make it a little bit less over braked. Now the downside to that is that I'm probably going to get some backlashes because the brakes are going to be weaker. And yeah, that's something that I definitely am okay with, and I look for, because it allows me to get a little bit further casting distances. Okay, so that is one way of reducing the brakes. Now we're going to go ahead and we're going to upgrade the bushings. I've actually not done this yet, and I don't know if it's going to make that big of a difference, but you guys will find out with me and see whether or not it's actually worthwhile of a modification. So you need 4. So actually it looks like I got 5. 4 right there. And then we're going to go ahead and actually remove. You need a Phillips for this. I'm sorry, a flathead. All right, trusty flathead. And then you need something to kind of pick these end caps out. So I like using this bearing pulling tool, but there's 2 little openings, one on here and then one here at the ends, and all you do is just stick something in there and then it just pops out like that. It's kind of crazy how easy that is. And oh, it actually is a Phillips or a flathead, but I'm just going to go ahead and use a flathead. So we're going to take out one side, and I'll show you how to do one side, and then we can compare the bushing to the bearing side. So you just go ahead and unscrew this all the way out. Alrighty. And And then you'll see that one bushing is right there, and we can go ahead and remove that. And I'm going to look for shims. I don't see any. Nope, no shims. And you'll see that these are the same exact size. So hopefully that'll fit well. Now I will say that these bushings are actually not bad at all. And so, you know, if you don't want to have to go through all this trouble, you don't have to. But by doing this, you are making it a 11+1 ball bearing reel, which is, you know, kind of nice. All right, so you've got the ball bearing in the knob itself, and then the one ball bearing on the handle knob shaft. And then this is the hard part, is always getting this screw into the handle knob shaft itself. I kind of just, you know, loosely seat it there. And then what I'll do is I'll try to, keeping everything still, kind of reverse the direction of the way you need to go to see if you can get one thread to kind of sit and seat. And then hopefully it'll go in. Yeah, there we go. All right. So make sure you center your screw and your handle knob. And then go ahead and tighten it down. Now you don't want to tighten the screw on the wrong part of the bearing. You want to get it on that inner housing. Because if you get it and tighten it on, and the screw actually touches the inner and the outer housing, then you're kind of not letting the bearing spin freely, or spin at all. All right, there we go. It's bottomed out. Go ahead and put the cap on. Actually, we'll leave the cap off so that we know. So this one is going to be the bearing. Ooh, that spins pretty nicely. And this is the bushing. So there is quite a bit of difference. Bearing, bushing. Bearing, bushing. Can you actually tell the difference when you're reeling it in? I don't know. But anyways, there you have it. There is the bushing to ball bearing modification, and then there is the reduction by removing one of the brake shoes completely. If you guys are curious in the other ways that you can kind of reduce the braking effect, then I will have Jimmy's video linked in the description below. And then I will also have Zen, who is known as Kyryu Lear Maniac, in the description below as well. Anyways, with that being said, thank you guys so much for watching. If you like this video, please consider giving it a thumbs up. If you got some value out of it and you're not subscribed, please consider subscribing. It really helps the channel grow. And I will catch you guys in the next one. Peace.